Italian commanders calculated it was mathematically impossible for Montgomery's forces to continue advancing 350 miles from their supply bases. They were about to learn they had underestimated Allied aerial logistics by a factor of 15. September 19, 1943. Italian High Command Headquarters, Montserrat. General Pietro Badoglio reviewed the latest intelligence reports from the collapsing Southern Front. His staff had calculated the mathematics of British supply lines stretching over 350 miles from the Salerno beachheads to Montgomery's spearheading 8th Army. The British have outrun their logistics. Montgomery will halt within days, perhaps hours. No army can sustain such advanced speeds without fuel. From his position at Mussolini's former command bunker, Badoglio analyzed what every Italian general understood from experience. An armored division consumed 120,000 gallons of fuel daily when advancing. The British were now 350 miles from their supply depots. The calculation was inescapable. Montgomery's 8th Army would grind to a halt, giving the Italian forces time to regroup at the Volturno, perhaps hold until winter. What Badoglio didn't know was that 95 miles away, 800 C-47 Dakota transport aircraft were already airborne in an endless aerial convoy, engines roaring in defiance of military doctrine, carrying 8,500 tons of supplies every 24 hours. Operation Manna, an aerial logistics operation so audacious that Italian military science had never conceived it possible, was about to shatter every assumption about mechanized warfare. Within 72 hours, Montgomery's supposedly immobilized tanks would crash through Italian positions at the Volturno. Within a week, they would liberate Naples. Within a month, they would stand at the Gustav Line. The Italian High Command's finest military minds were about to receive a lesson in Allied aerial logistics that would redefine their understanding of modern warfare. Delivered by 18,000 aircrew, 60% of them Commonwealth pilots, who turned coordinated airdrops into the most efficient military supply line in history. The Italian High Command's confidence in Allied logistical failures stemmed from decades of military experience and recent observations. The Regio Esercito had pioneered Alpine warfare, revolutionized mountain defense tactics, and understood intimately the tyranny of supply lines. Their own campaigns had repeatedly stalled when logistics failed to keep pace with tactical success. In North Africa, the Italian advance had foundered not from British resistance initially, but from a simple inability to supply forces across vast distances. Italian trucks broke down on desert roads. Mule trains, still 70% of Italian military transport, couldn't match the speed of armored spearheads. Railway destruction meant supplies piled up hundreds of miles from the front. General Alfredo Gazzoni, who would command Italian forces in Sicily, had written in June, "The British faced the same logistical impossibility we faced in Libya. Their mechanical advantage becomes a disadvantage. Machines require fuel, ammunition, parts. They have advanced 350 miles in 25 days. History teaches us what comes next. Paralysis. Italian intelligence meticulously tracked British consumption rates. A single Cromwell tank burned 0.8 gallons per mile in combat conditions. An infantry division required 300 tons of ammunition daily during active operations. Montgomery's forces consumed 180,000 gallons of fuel daily just for vehicle operations. The mathematics were overwhelming. General Mario Roata, reviewing the reports in Rome, initially dismissed early sightings. No aerial force can deliver 8,000 tons daily for a week. Mechanical failures alone prevent it. This is propaganda or misidentification. But intercepted RAF radio traffic confirmed it. More disturbing for Italian commanders, the British were broadcasting their supply drop zones openly without code, supremely confident in their ability to deliver faster than Italians could react. By September 25, 1943, Italian intelligence had compiled comprehensive reports on Operation Manna. The implications were catastrophic for Italian planning. Every assumption about British military capability required complete revision. The report contained observations that defied Italian military science. British wasted aircraft prodigiously, abandoning damaged planes rather than repairing them. Pilots operated on benzodrine for days, violating every principle of personnel management. No radio silence discipline, making the entire system vulnerable to air attack that never came. Aircraft loss rates of 15% daily, simply overwhelmed by redundancy. Fuel consumption that would bankrupt any European Air Force. Field Marshal Giovanni Mest's response revealed growing desperation. If these reports are accurate, we face not a superior army, but a superior civilization. They make no effort to hide because they don't fear us. They waste resources because they have infinite resources. We cannot defeat this with military tactics. The Operation Manna pilots paid a physical price Italian observers couldn't see. Pilots operated for 16 straight hours, hallucinating from exhaustion and stimulants. Crashes killed 450 aircrew in Manna's operational period. Aircraft collided in fog, crashed on damaged airstrips, burned when overheated engines ignited. Yet morale remained extraordinarily high. These men, mostly Commonwealth pilots, denied equal recognition at home, understood they were making history. They were proving Mussolini's imperial theories wrong with every ton dropped, every mile flown. Captured Italian officers provided eloquent testimony to Operation Manna's impact. Colonel Francesco Zingales, taken prisoner in October 1943, told interrogators, "We knew we'd lost when we understood your supply system. You violate every rule. Waste fuel, abandon aircraft, exhaust pilots, yet succeed through sheer volume. You've industrialized warfare beyond our comprehension." The psychological impact on Italian forces was devastating. Italian soldiers could hear British aircraft all day, every day. Endless engines, endless supplies. They had 3 rounds per rifle, while British were receiving millions of rounds from the sky. The sound itself became psychological warfare. The aircraft themselves amazed Italian engineers. The Douglas C-47 Dakota, the backbone of Operation Manna, represented mass production perfection. Douglas aircraft had produced over 10,000 of these aircraft by war's end, more transport planes than the entire Italian military possessed of all types combined. The aircraft featured innovations Italians hadn't implemented. Twin engines as standard, not exception. Automatic navigation systems, pressurization that allowed high-altitude flight, engines that ran on low-quality fuel without modification, heating that actually worked at altitude. More stunning was British maintenance philosophy. Where Italians rebuilt engines, British replaced them. Where Italians rationed parts, British discarded entire aircraft for minor problems. Where Italians had master mechanics, British had thousands of competent mechanics who could perform 80% of repairs. As the front moved north, Operation Manna adapted with speed that stunned Italian planning officers accustomed to weeks of preparation for major logistics changes. When the original drop zones near Salerno became insufficient, British created Operation Manna extensions overnight. White Lion, Bari to Florence. Green Arrow, Brindisi to supply transfer points. Red Eagle, Naples to Rome corridor. Each new route was operational within 48 hours of conception. Italian staff officers required weeks to plan similar operations. The British simply painted new markers, assigned aircraft, and started flying. The predominance of Commonwealth pilots in Operation Manna created cognitive dissonance for fascist racial theorists. Italian ideology declared colonials inferior, incapable of technical tasks, lacking initiative. Yet, these pilots were performing logistics miracles that Italian forces couldn't match. The Commonwealth airmen understood the irony. They knew what the fascists thought of them, which made them fly even harder. Every mile they flew proved Mussolini wrong. They were fighting imperialism with aircraft keys, defeating fascist ideology through superior performance. Some Italian prisoners forced to load supply containers as laborers found their worldview shattered by working alongside Australian sergeants who calculated weight distributions faster than Italian engineers, who spoke better English than Italian English instructors, who treated prisoners fairly despite everything fascist propaganda had told them about colonial behavior. Operation Manna required infrastructure Italians deemed impossible to create under combat conditions. Engineers built or reinforced 25 airstrips, created 12 major fuel depots, established 18 maintenance stations, and constructed 6 temporary cities for aircrew, all while the operation was running. The airfield at Foggia had been destroyed by Italian engineers specifically to halt British logistics. The Italian High Command calculated replacement would require 4 weeks minimum. British engineers built a temporary airstrip in 18 hours, while Manna flights detoured only 12 miles to hastily cleared alternate fields. Italian engineers observed British construction methods with amazement. No planning meetings, no detailed blueprints, just immediate action. They built faster than Italians could destroy, created infrastructure that appeared overnight in Italian countryside. One Operation Manna achievement particularly stunned Italian artillery officers. Ammunition supply rates that exceeded their highest theoretical calculations. British artillery units fired without restriction, a luxury no Italian unit had enjoyed since 1940. During the reduction of Monte Battaglia fortifications in October 1943, the 13 Corps Artillery fired 85,000 rounds in 24 hours. Operation Manna delivered every round plus 15% surplus. Italian artillery defending Monte Battaglia was rationed to 40 rounds per gun per day. The disparity was overwhelming. British guns fired continuously for hours, while Italian artillery officers calculated that such bombardments required 40 aircraft loads of ammunition per hour. Operation Manna provided it without pause. Operation Manna consumed aircraft at rates that would have paralyzed any other air force. By late October, mechanical attrition reached staggering proportions. Average aircraft life, 8,000 hours, normal 25,000. Daily deadline rate 25% of all aircraft. Engines replaced 400 weekly. Parts consumed 8,000 weekly. Total aircraft destroyed or abandoned 4,000 plus. Yet the operation never slowed. British production had anticipated such losses. Ships arrived weekly at Italian ports carrying hundreds of new aircraft. Replacement pilots were trained in 3 days and thrown into formations. Italian calculations showed British destroying more aircraft weekly than the Regio Aeronautica possessed in Italy. Yet their transport capacity increased rather than decreased. They had achieved something Italians thought impossible: logistics faster than consumption. Italian civilians along Operation Manna routes witnessed British abundance that contradicted years of fascist occupation scarcity. The psychological impact on occupied populations was immediate and profound. Operation Manna pilots, particularly Commonwealth airmen, often shared their rations with Italian civilians despite regulations. Every landing, children would gather and pilots would give them chocolate, cigarettes, soap. The contrast with fascist occupation was stark. British gave away casually what Italians had rationed strictly. Italian intelligence reported the propaganda impact. Italian civilians now believe British victory inevitable. They cite the aircraft formations as proof. Resistance activity has increased 350% along Manna routes. The population that accepted our rule now actively opposes it. 65 days later, those same commanders surrendered to armies supplied by Operation Manna, finally understanding that British aircraft had defeated Italian artillery, that industrial abundance had overwhelmed military excellence, that logistics had become strategy. Operation Manna ended on November 20th, 1943, but its impact echoed through military history. It proved that in the industrial age, victory belongs not to the bravest soldiers or brightest generals, but to the nation that could deliver the most supplies, the fastest, the farthest. The Italian commanders who scoffed at British aerial logistics in September 1943 signed armistice documents in October 1943, defeated by 18,000 aircrew who revolutionized warfare at 180 miles per hour. Their story deserves its place among the great military operations of history. Not because it was elegant or efficient. It was neither, but because it worked. Operation Manna kept Montgomery rolling, kept the Italians retreating, and proved that in modern war, the formation of aircraft matters more than the column of tanks.